Welcome back to Old School Sports and our Out of the Park Baseball 24 playthrough of the Cincinnati Reds. We are about to get the 2026 playoffs underway. The Reds are in the playoffs for the third consecutive season, third time in our 4 seasons as general manager of the team. Have not had a ton of success in the playoffs. Did have a very successful regular season this year, winning the NL Central for a second consecutive season. You can see we took the lead late in March and was never really close after that. Definitely a strong showing for the Reds during this regular season. Unfortunately, the playoffs have not been particularly kind to us over the years. First year when we made the playoffs, we lost a wild card series to the Braves. And last year in the playoffs, we lost a division series after winning the division title to the Diamondbacks. So we've had 2 playoff appearances, 2 quick exits, still don't have a series win in the playoffs. So hopefully we can do better this season. We're about to begin our series against the Atlanta Braves. The wild card series are already over. We ended up edging the Braves out by just 1 game to get the home field advantage, as well as the first round bye into the NLDS. So hopefully we can make the most of that and get a little bit of revenge on the Braves for taking us out in the playoffs a couple seasons ago. Although our record against the Braves this season is pretty bad. I checked in on that when we thought we might end up in a tiebreaker with them towards the end of our last episode, and you can see we were 1-5 this year against the Braves, so it's going to be a challenging series for us. Before we get the series underway, just a few housekeeping issues. I know some of you were commenting earlier today on our last episode, which was a few days ago, how we've kind of disappeared from the earth. It's been as long as we've ever gone without posting. Unfortunately, real life just got in the way of that over this week. Was a incredibly busy week at work. When I finally dragged myself home at night, basically just went right to bed. So no time for OOTP this week, no time for much of anything this week, but it is now Friday, and we're getting ready to see if this team that we've got high hopes for can do something in the playoffs. Also, check in on the leaderboards for the season. Ellie De La Cruz ended up finishing third in the league in homers, and he also doesn't show up on the stolen base board here, but he did have 40 stolen bases, so a 40-40 season from the young first baseman. Also drove in 130 runs, which was second best in the National League. Turning to our very accomplished pitching staff, Corbin Burns and Zach Gallen, second and third in the league in ERA. Nick Lodolo and Will Warren, first and third, first and actually tied for second in the league in wins. And Corbin Burns, our ace, despite that 11-11 record on the year, was third in the league in pitcher WAR. So have high hopes for the playoffs. Hopefully we can do better against the Braves than we did against them during this regular season and than we did against them 2 years ago in the playoffs. Taking a look at the season, we're fourth in the National League in runs scored, first in the National League in runs allowed. We finished 5 games below our Pythagorean projection of 98 and 64. Winning record at home, close to 500 on the road. Pretty even splits in extra inning games and 1-run games. And after a relatively slow start to the season in April, was a pretty strong year for us until a mediocre September. Fortunately, we did kind of bust out of that a bit, going 4-1 in October to ensure that we held off the Braves for that home field advantage. And now it's our opportunity to see what we can do with it. Did, as I typically do, have to get rid of a pitcher. In the playoffs, typically go with 12 pitchers and 14 position players due to the off days. And what that ended up meaning was Clark Schmidt, who had kind of a up and down year for us, literally and figuratively, was back and forth between AAA on a rehab assignment in the majors. And you can see he had 450-ish ERAs in both AAA and the majors. We thought he was likely to be our fifth starter this year. Injuries kept him from ever really having much of a chance in that row. And also the fact that Will Warren was 15-2 with a 3.75 ERA, started the year as our fifth starter and is now our fourth starter. And then also Rever San Martin ended up 13-6 with a 3.34 ERA, spending a lot of time in that number 5 starter role for us. So Schmidt is the odd man out for the roster as far as the pitching staff. That did allow us to bring Will Benson up, who split the year between AAA and the majors. Didn't get a ton of playing time at each level. He is a left-handed bat that can hit the ball out of the ballpark. And if we need a defensive replacement because of injury in the outfield, he's reasonably competent at all 3 outfield positions. Maybe Will Benson will get an opportunity to hit a big pinch hit home run for us or something at some point through the playoffs. Other than that, the only interesting things of note, Nelvi Marte, the very good young second baseman, going to be out for the playoffs. He's been recovering from a torn hamstring since the end of June, has some delays in his rehab, and his season is over. I guess there is a chance that we get our starting center fielder, Jay Allen II, back from a fractured thumb that he suffered about 2.5 weeks ago, 2 to 3 weeks away. Not much of a bat, but certainly love that glove down in center field. Also love his speed. Even with the injury, he led the National League with 47 steals this year. So certainly not optimal to be down our starting second baseman and down our starting center fielder, likely for however long we are in these playoffs. But that'll give us an opportunity to see what some of these other players can do. Benny Montgomery, the Rule 5 acquisition, Kei Kodama, who we picked up as an international free agent a couple of years ago, and Jazz Chisholm Jr., who we picked up in a trade and hit really well for us down the stretch as we tried to bring another left-handed bat on our team, are all players who could conceivably get some action in center field with the departure of Jay Allen II for at least the NLDS and the NLCS if we're fortunate enough to get there. Holding out a little hope if we get into a World Series, maybe we'd have a chance at having Allen back, but it'd be a good problem to even be concerned about that, because that would mean that we've gotten this team into the World Series. And on paper, despite our 1-5 record against the Braves this season, you could argue we're a little bit better. We won one more game than the Braves this year. They were 5th in the National League in runs scored. We were one better at 4th, although it was literally one more run than we scored over them over the course of the season. They were 3rd in the National League in runs against. We were number 1, as we mentioned. So hopefully our pitching will get the job done for us. We've got our ace, Corbin Burns, on the mound. Jaden Henline going for the Braves, 24-year-old, 7-6 this year with a 4.18 ERA in his first major league action. Certainly has some incredible stuff. Nice 3-pitch arsenal of an exceptional change, really good curve, and an above-average fastball. So doesn't throw all that hard, and he does have extreme fly ball tendencies. Only gave up 13 homers in 114 innings pitched at the major league level. 30 years ago, a pitcher who gave up 13 home runs in 114 innings pitched wasn't necessarily all that great, but in this day and age, that's a pretty impressive number. So you'd have to think with our ace on the mound and an experienced playoff pitcher like Corbin Burns against a rookie, the pitching should favor us. but certainly going to have our work cut out for us against Jaden Henline. And we get a 2-1 victory. Max Meyer with the save, Yoshida with the only home run in the game, so obviously a solo shot for him for the Braves. But we're off to a 1-0 start in the series. We got 2 runs in the third. They came back with that solo homer in the fourth. And Burns got the job done. 2-run double by Errol Vera, the Rule 5 pick from a couple of years ago. Only had 5 hits on the day, the double by Vera. Carson Kelly, the catcher Edwin Arroyo, and then Kelnick had a couple of hits for us. Burns was excellent, 2 hits over 7 innings, struck out 9. Palante with the hold. Max Meyer, who took over as our closer about a month and a half ago, with the save. And we've taken a 1-0 lead over the Braves. So a big win for our Reds here in Game 1. But certainly want to ensure that we get this second game won. We've got the NL leader in wins, Nick Lodolo, 17-7, 3.41 ERA. Guy who's going to be a free agent after this season. Still arbitration eligible, but going to be making a lot of money after this season. Arbitration number in the $20-21 million range, most likely. Going against Christian Javier. Excellent stuff. Another extreme fly ball pitcher. Doesn't have the best movement on his pitches. The hope is maybe we can hit a few home runs off of him. You can see he gave up 31 homers this year between Houston and the ATL. Hopefully playing in Great American Ballpark, our offense will score some runs today to give us a 2-0 lead and maybe make this game a little less tight than the last one was. That's what we're hoping for at the very least. Another tight game, 2-0. We did get a homer from Jazz Chisholm Jr., so our pitching has been excellent. Another save from Meyer, Burns, and Lodolo with the W's as the starting pitchers. We got a run in the first, another run in the fifth. That solo homer by Jazz Chisholm Jr., who's proven to be a pretty good trade deadline acquisition for us, was the margin of victory. Edwin Arroyo also with a run-scoring single off of Javier. Javier had a respectable outing, but Lodolo, 3 hits, 3 walks over 5, and then a bunch of relievers combined for 2-hit ball over the final 4 innings. Alexis Diaz, Rever San Martin, who looks like he's got flu-like symptoms, Justin Brule, the lefty, and Max Meyer, the closer, combined for 4 innings of scoreless relief. And our Reds are 1 win away from finally moving on in a playoff series, but that does mean there's still more work to do. So we are going to travel to Atlanta and see if we can perhaps get the sweep. Certainly going to be tough going up against Spencer Strider. Incredible stuff. That fastball and slider basically off the charts. Was 11-10 this year, but struck out 249 batters in 187 innings. Throws into the triple digits. Certainly going to be a tough pitching matchup for us. You can see he's already won a game for the Braves in their wild card series. Zach Gallen, number 3 starter, we picked up as a free agent this past year, was 13-12 with a 3.23 ERA for us. Certainly would think that the pitching matchup would favor the Braves here with Strider on the mound and also in Atlanta. And you can see we've got Max Fried on the mound tomorrow too. So going to be some tough going for the Reds. The hope is obviously to win today. At the very least, we'd love to win one of these next 2 games. But the pitching matchups and being on the road are going to make it a challenge. But we got the job done. Or no, we did not get the job done. Atlanta Braves beat us. I don't know why I saw that Spencer Strider was the winner and thought that we had gotten lucky. I'm trying to will this playoff victory for the Reds, as you can tell. Gallen with the loss, 5-3. Braves with 2 in the 5th. We came back with 1 in the 6th, but they extended the margin with runs in the 6th, 7th, and 8th. We did get 2 in the 9th, but too little too late. So Gallen only went 4 innings through 91 pitches. Diaz, San Martin, Clay Holmes, former closer, finally getting a little bit of action, and you can see not good with 2 earned runs over 2 1/3 innings, gave up a couple of hits. And Huascar Inoa, who did actually end up pitching pretty well for us this year in a relief role after we finally gave up on having him in the bullpen, got the final out for us. But we're only up 2-1 now. And as I was talking about, we've got another tough pitching matchup coming up today. So Max Fried on the mound for the Braves, perennial All-Star, perennial Gold Glove winner, and the 2024 NL Cy Young Award. 14-7 this year with a league best 2.70 ERA, 74 FIP minus, and 5 WAR among pitchers. So another challenging matchup for us. Will Warren, who was a revelation for us as a 4th and 5th starter this year, 15-2 with a 3.75 ERA. On paper, certainly in terms of the pitcher ratings, Atlanta's got to be the favorite. Would certainly love to not put ourselves in a situation where we could go home and have to avoid having gone up 2-0 in a series and then potentially losing 3 in a row. And the only way to avoid that being a possibility is to win here today and upset the Braves on the road. And we got the job done. These Reds have finally won a postseason series, a 6-4 victory. Rever San Martin out of the bullpen with the win. Fried with the loss. Max Meyer saved every game in the series. Got home runs from Chisholm Jr. and Kodama. Former shortstop Nick Ahmed hit a home run against us. Nick Lodolo, with that excellent game in Game 2, named the series MVP. And it looks like the Padres are up 2-1 on the Dodgers, so there could be an upset there in the other NLDS. Taking a look at the box score, we scored a run in the 1st. They tied it in the 3rd. We scored 3 in the 7th and 1 in the 8th. They came back with 3 in the bottom of the 8th to make things interesting, but we added a run in the 9th and then presumably brought on Meyer to close things out for us. He actually came on in the 8th inning, got the final out in the 8th, and then 3 outs in the 9th. Warren, 4 2/3, only allowed 1 earned run. Diaz, San Martin with solid relief. Justin Brule, the lefty, 2 hits and a walk, 3 earned runs allowed over an inning and 2/3. So he's the one who made it interesting there in the 8th inning. But fortunately, Max Meyer was able to settle things down. And our Cincinnati Reds have finally moved on in a postseason series. And we are headed to the NLCS against either the Dodgers or the Padres. And a little bit of a surprising result in the playoffs in both leagues. The Kansas City Royals and the Los Angeles Dodgers, the only 2 100-win teams in baseball, both got dispatched pretty easily in their respective division series. The Royals getting swept by the Red Sox and the Dodgers losing 3-1 to their divisional rivals. So what that means is that the Mariners, who swept the Angels, and our Reds are the teams with the home field advantage here in the league championship series. Before we get to the playoffs, though, we've got the International Free Agent Showcase, so we can take a look at the talent that we will be pursuing and trying to get to come to our organization come January. Get a first look at those prospects. And it's at least optically, at a first glance, kind of a weird international amateur free agent class this year. Admittedly, our scouting accuracy is extremely low, but our scout sees just a handful of position players among the 93 position players who are available that are 3-star or higher potential. And at least according to our scout, again, admittedly with extremely low scouting accuracy, there's a little bit more interesting talent in the pitching pool, where among only 25 pitchers, there are 4 prospects that he thinks are 4-star potential or possible. So we're going to spend a little bit of time looking at these top prospects. Probably will bring all of the guys that we think are kind of top into camp. Obviously, we don't know much about any of these players at this point. Luis Galindo, don't love the personality in general, but he does have a high work ethic. Looks like he could have a 5 or 6 pitch arsenal when all is said and done. So plus stuff, movement, and control if everything works out. Certainly could see ourselves bringing him in. Alfredo Galarza, another pitcher. Looks like he could have a 3-pitch arsenal most likely, like the durability, plus stuff and movement if he fully develops with acceptable control. Certainly would bring him in also. Jesus Martinez, again, a mixed personality with the high work ethic but the low leadership, but another guy who potentially has a 5 or 6 pitch arsenal when all is said and done, plus stuff, movement and control, durability, if he reaches his full potential, which is obviously a little doubtful with any of these players. He's also much older than a lot of the others, almost 18 years old, but we'll bring him into camp, get to know him better. And then David Medrano, probably the least diverse prospect in terms of only having a 3-pitch arsenal. Still looks like he could have plus stuff and movement. So we're not going to overthink this. We'll certainly bring in the top 4 pitchers to training to at least get to know them a little better. Would think that we'll probably bring in the top 4 batters according to our scout as well. Rogelio Nieto, very strange profile. Incredible home run power and an incredible eye where he walks potentially a ton, but he is awful as far as striking out. So he is the epitome of a 3-outcome player with that profile. Center fielder who has average-ish range, a poor error rating, and a rag arm out there in the outfield. Certainly profiles is a left fielder, maybe a first baseman. The home run power in the eye with acceptable contact, hopefully, if he fully develops, are interesting. We'll bring him into camp and get to know him better. Just kind of a very odd potential profile with him. Juan Navarro, another center fielder, like the high work ethic and intelligence. Doesn't look like he's going to be an exceptional hitter. As I said, it looks like the hitting prospects, at least as far as international amateur free agents, seem to be down a little this year, but we'll know these players a lot more as we continue to scout them. Jesus Luna, right fielder, looks like he could be an acceptable major league player. Probably, even if he's fully developed, you'd prefer him to be a 4th outfielder than a starter, but not a horrible prospect. And then left fielder Eddie Molina. Love the personality. Not all that exceptional defensively. He's got home run power that should be above average. Everything else is kind of average, maybe a little worse. He is only barely 16 years old, so some potential there. We'll bring those 4 guys into camp too. And I'm going to spend a little time now offline just figuring out a couple other players that I might want to bring in before running our first international amateur free agent training session and getting to know some of these guys better. And to round out the 10 players we're going to bring into camp, we're going to bring in 1 more position player and 1 more pitcher. The position player is shortstop Luis Figueroa. Looks like he can be pretty versatile defensively, although certainly not exceptional. Has a little bit of speed, decent contact and gap power. He's not going to strike out a ton. Certainly not the most exciting prospect in the world, but we will invite him to training and at least see what the scout thinks of him with a little bit more time to look at him. Taking a look at the pitchers, I believe it was Juan Vargas that I wanted to bring in. No, it was not. Who was it? Was it Machuca? Okay, it was Alfredo Machuca. Like the work ethic, like the durability, does have potential to develop a 4 or 5 pitch arsenal. Probably not a top end starter, even if he does completely develop. But at least looks like he's got a good personality, and if he developed as much as possible, could be an interesting 4th or 5th starter on a good team at the major league level. So we have got our 10 players that we're going to have at camp on board. Let's run the practice, see if we can improve some relationships and improve our scouting accuracy. And we have started to build some strong relationships. We've got an average scouting report on Medrano, average scouting report on Luna. Luna still looks like a guy who, as I talked about, could be a really nice 4th outfielder perhaps. David Medrano still looks like he could be a potentially interesting starter down the line. So we'll have plenty of time in the off season to continue working on scouting the international amateur free agents, but it gave us a nice break before getting back to the pressure of a playoff series against the San Diego Padres. And our Reds, who have finally won a playoff series, are now ready to participate in their first National League Championship Series, going up against a wild card team. But the wild card teams, the top 2 wild card teams at least that came out of the NL West this year, are both very battle-tested teams. The Padres, 89-73 record, even though they were 3rd in the division. So only 4 games worse than we were. We did take the season series against the Padres 4-2. They were 9th in the NL in runs scored, 5th in the NL in runs against. So on paper, or on a computer screen, we are certainly the favorites in this series. We've also got home field advantage. We've got our ace, Corbin Burns, back on the mound. Joe Musgrove on the mound for the Padres, 14-4 this year with an NL best 207 in a 3rd innings pitched, 3.39 ERA, and 63.6% of his starts were quality starts this year, which was the highest figure in the NL. Certainly looks like a very even pitching matchup. Hopefully the fact that we are at home will end up working out in our favor. We'll get things underway. And we do get a 3-2 victory. Max Meyer with the win in relief, and Dylan Coleman with the loss. Take a look at the box score. We had a 2-0 lead heading into the 8th. They came back in the top of the 8th with 2 runs to tie it. And Braylon Minier, a run-scoring single in the bottom of the 9th for a walk-off victory for the Cincinnati Reds. Ellie De La Cruz, 3 hits for him. Arroyo with a couple. Minier obviously with the big one. Corbin Burns was really good, 4 hits and 10 strikeouts over 6 1/3 innings pitched. San Martin Palante gave up a couple runs in relief, but Max Meyer came on to stabilize things after Palante blew the save for us. And our Reds are up 1-0 in this National League Championship Series. Move on to hopefully play a game number 2 if my old computer will move us forward to the next day, Ooh, it looks like we might. It said we were going to go up against Kyle Wright, our former pitcher, but it looks like he got slid back another day. But it'll be interesting to see if we can maybe score some runs off him when we ultimately face him. Nick Lodolo going up against Bailey Ober, who's 2-0 with a 0.69 ERA in the playoffs this year. So he's been excellent in the playoffs for the Padres. Was 12-9 with a 3.76 ERA this season. Doesn't have the best movement on his pitches. Doesn't throw incredibly hard. Hopefully we can score some runs off of him and head west to beautiful San Diego, up 2-0. Not to be the case, though. Couple of home runs from Kyle Manzardo. Kelnick did hit a couple of home runs for us. They also got a homer from Dylan Dingler. Lodolo takes the loss, a 5-2 victory for the Padres. So they have seized home field advantage from our Reds. They scored 2 in the third, 1 in the fourth, also added on insurance runs in the 8th and the 9th. Not a lot of offense from us. Kelnick with a couple of solo home runs accounting for all of our offense. Lodolo was not horrible. 5 hits, 2 walks, 3 earned runs over 5 innings, but certainly was not great. Diaz, San Martin, Palante, ugly again. He has not been good in the playoffs. You can see a 10.80 ERA at this point. Justin Brule got the final 2 outs. So unfortunately, we are headed to San Diego tied 1-1 rather than having a lead. So we're going to need to win at least one of the 3 games in San Diego to ensure that we'll be back in Cincinnati for a potential Game 6. Obviously would love to win 2 or 3 games in San Diego so we go back home with a lead. But certainly getting that first W in San Diego is going to be important to us. We've got Zach Gallen on the mound against Kyle Wright, former pitcher for us. Looks like he split this year between St. Louis and San Diego. 3-8 with the Cardinals, 3-4 with the Padres, but very respectable 3.21 and 3.63 ERAs in both places. Did not really work out for us last year. Went 5-11 with a 5.87 ERA after we picked him up from the Braves. We decided to move on from him. And as we talked about, he had been a 4th or 5th starter for us the year before. We ended up doing fine with Will Warren and Rever San Martin in those roles most of the year. But certainly would hope that we can get a win against our former pitcher here in Game 3. And we do get a W. Looks like Clay Holmes injured. Got a finger blister that's going to impact him for 3 days, so we'll need to figure out whether we want to just bench him for the next 2 days of this series. But let's take a look. 2-1 victory. San Martin, who we were just talking about, got the win in relief. Zach Eflin with the loss, and the lefty Brett Martin with a win. I'm guessing this may have been a extra inning game. We'll take a look at the box score. Tatis Jr. and Errol Vera with home runs. And oh yeah, it was a 14-inning game. We scored in the 3rd. Tatis Jr. with the run for the Padres there in the 4th. And it looks like we got our home run in the 3rd because Kelnick with a sac fly in the top of the 14th to looked like he scored Braylon Minier, I believe. No, it wasn't Braylon Minier. Looks like Errol Vera scored both of our runs. So Vera was on base. Minier moved him over with the single. And then Kelnick with the sac fly to get the victory. So the good news is we've at least gotten back to even as far as home field advantage with our second win of the series. Guarantees that worst case scenario is there will be at least one more game in Cincinnati this year. Obviously, our hope would be to just keep the momentum going and get out of the series by winning the next two games. Clay Holmes injured, as we talked about. Gallen was really good. 6 hits, 1 walk, 7 strikeouts over 6 1/3, allowed just that 1 earned run. And then Brule, Meyer, Palante, Holmes, Inoa, San Martin, and Martin combined to allow just 2 hits and no earned runs over 7 2/3 of innings pitched. So excellent pitching by our bullpen. Clearly not optimal that we did use 7 relievers, 7 of our 8 relievers in this game. So people may be a little bit banged up, but San Diego had to pitch 14 innings also, and they used 5 relievers. So I think we're going to try to avoid using Holmes. And moderate impact on his throwing does not sound like something that we want to be encouraging him to pitch. So at least tentatively, we're going to bench him for the next 3 days. Hopefully, if we do end up not winning both of these games and end up back in Cincinnati, he'll be healthy and well rested at that point, and hopefully over the finger blister. But right now, goal is to win at least one more in San Diego and hopefully head home to Cincinnati with a lead or with the playoff series wrapped up. Will Warren on the mound for us, our 4th starter against Jose Urquidy. Was 6-5 this year, split the year between the Mets and the Padres. 6-5 with a 3.13 ERA. Was below replacement level with the Mets, almost 2 wins above replacement with the Padres. So certainly more effective once he got to San Diego. But certainly seems like a pitcher that hopefully we can score some runs off of. They scored a lot of runs off of us, though, unfortunately. We got the home runs in the game from Kelnick, Minier, and Kodama. The problem is that's the only way we could score any runs. We scored 3 runs all on solo home runs. They scored 7 runs against us to knot things up at 2-2 in the series. Oof, they jumped on us with 6 runs there in the top of the first inning. So Warren did not do the job in terms of quality. And then with Inoa, San Martin, Diaz, Martin, and Brule all having to pitch, also didn't do a good job in giving our bullpen a rest. Urquidy did it for the Padres, went 7 innings. They only had to use 1 reliever. So that's a big swing in the series. The fact that we couldn't even get 4 or 5 innings out of Warren, and we ended up having to use 5 relievers again today, at least 4 of whom, I can't remember who exactly pitched, but at least 4 of them we know pitched the day before. Possibly all 5 of them did. Doesn't necessarily set us up well for the 5th game here. Looking at our pitching staff, we've got a lot of guys who are pretty worn out at this point. Looks like we're going to be reliant on Palante, who's been brutal in the postseason, and our closer, Max Meyer, as hopefully the players who can potentially help us out of the bullpen here in this upcoming 5th game of the series. And hopefully we'll also be able to get a long outing from Corbin Burns. That may prove to be pretty important. And given the situation we're in with our bullpen, we had talked about this an episode or 2 ago with some of the strategy settings and the amount of innings pitched my starters were going. I had the aggressive tiredness hooks on for all of my starting pitchers throughout the season. Had kept them on through the playoffs, figuring we've got a bullpen that's pretty good. Let's rely on it. But we've actually, as you can see, tick that off here for Game 5 of the series, given our bullpen is so depleted. If we can get an extra 3, 4, 5 outs out of Burns tomorrow, my hope is maybe that will prove to be a difference maker as we try to ensure we're going back to Cincinnati up 3-2 rather than behind 3-2. Same pitching matchup between Burns and Musgrove that we had in Game 1, which we did win, but that was at home. We are on the road today to see if we can hopefully go home with a 3-2 lead. And we do get a 5-4 victory. Burns with the W, Musgrove with the loss, the save from Palante, homer from Chisholm Jr., Machado and Manzardo with homers for the Padres. So the series isn't over, but we've got a 3-2 lead, and it looks like the Mariners are already waiting for whoever comes out of the National League. Take a look at the box score. We scored 2 in the third and then 3 in the seventh to account for our 5 runs. We got the job done. Ribbies from Chisholm, Minier, a couple from Kelnick and Kodama. Ended up getting 7 and a third innings out of Burns. Interesting that Meyer came on and got the hold, and then Palante with the save, but only 96 pitches over those 7 and a third innings. Was not vintage Corbin Burns, allowing 4 earned runs, but he did well enough, and he pitched deep into the game. Meyer and Palante were the 2 guys in our bullpen that were the most well-rested. So everything worked out as well as we could hope. We're headed back to Cincinnati, up 3-2, and we just need to win 1 game at Great American Ballpark to get this team to a World Series. And it looks like our center fielder, Jay Allen II, recovered a little quicker than expected, so we can potentially have him back if we get to the World Series. That would almost certainly mean that we would be sending Will Benson off of the roster. Don't really have an option to do that now with no injuries, but certainly would help us to have our excellent defensive center fielder who led the National League in stolen bases back for a potential World Series. But before that can become a issue and a potential reality, we still need to get 1 more win. Bailey Ober and Nick Lodolo on the mound in a rematch of Game 2, which was won by the Padres. Ober has been brilliant in the playoffs, 3-0 with a 1.35 ERA for San Diego. Hopefully we can give him his first loss of the postseason here today. And we have made the World Series with these Cincinnati Reds. 5-3 win. Was all on the relievers. San Martin with the win. Castillo with the loss. Max Meyer with his first save of the series after saving all 3 games in the NLDS. Kelnick and Kodama with home runs. Kelnick with 4 home runs, though, not the MVP of the series. Braylon Minier, one of the top prospects in baseball, brought him up when we had that injury to our starting second baseman, Marte. Hit .255 with 9 homers for us in the regular season, and he is now a National League Championship Series MVP at the age of 23 years old. 5-3 victory. Take a look at the box score. They had a 1-0 lead. We scored all of our runs in the 5th and 6th and held on despite allowing runs in the 7th and the 9th innings. Lodolo, not great again. I guess he was fine. I mean, 1 earned run over 4 innings pitched is a 2.25 ERA. Just a little disappointing that we couldn't get more than 4 innings pitched out of him. But with the day of rest in between the games in San Diego and Cincinnati, and the fact that we had only used the 2 relievers in Game 5 of the series there, the bullpen was presumably a little better rested. San Martin, Diaz, and Meyer in relief. Diaz and Meyer both gave up runs. Fortunately, we had a big enough lead to get through the game. The key for us is that Bailey Ober was injured. We're complaining we only got 4 innings pitched. He went 3 2/3. He had only given up 1 hit, had struck out 3. He was injured while pitching. That made them go to the bullpen, and we scored 3 runs off of Castillo and then a couple off of Kobe Robinson. And our Cincinnati Reds are headed to the World Series to play the Seattle Mariners, who are going to be looking to win the first World Championship in franchise history. And hopefully our Reds will be able to keep them from doing that. And as we start to get ready for the World Series, Mini A's stats hit 407 batting average, 429 on base percentage, 1 homer, drove in 3, and scored 2 runs. Honestly, a little surprised that Kelnick with 4 home runs, which means obviously had at least 4 runs scored and 4 runs batted in. A little surprised that he did not win MVP, but regardless, Cincinnati is going to be on to the World Series. You can see we're going to be facing the Mariners. And I am probably going to jinx myself by saying this, but I'm going to say it anyways. The latest patch for OOTP 24 came out today. Supposedly, it will lead to a more stable situation and some better financial AI for long-term games. If we can win the World Series with the Reds right now in this mini-series in our 4th season, it's probably going to be time to pull the plug on this series. It may be time to pull the plug on the series anyways, if I do some kind of offline testing of the updated version of the game, and it seems like what I need for beginning the long-term sim, but would certainly love to go out with a world championship with these Reds, and we are now only 4 games away from doing that. In our first OOTP 24 mini-series with the Yankees, we won the World Series in our 3rd year and moved on to these Reds. Would be a great piece of symmetry if we can win the World Series in the 4th year with these Reds and then move on to our long-term simulation. But obviously we are 4 games away from that potentially becoming a reality. And we've got to make some changes to the roster here with the fact that Jay Allen II is healthy, Will Benson off of the roster, Jay Allen back on the roster, and I'm going to spend some time tweaking our lineups, making sure that we've got the right mix of players in there before we try to win a World Series against Seattle and ensure that the Mariners organization remains without a World Series title. And as I've looked at the potential lineups and saw what David Bell want to do and what I wanted to do to overrule him, we're going back to defense. Jay Allen II and Edwin Arroyo is our 8th and 9th batters. Are not dynamic offensive players, but they are both very good defensive players. You can see Jay Allen II's ratings in the outfield. Looking at his fielding stats for the year, zone rating and defensive efficiency, both well above par. Edwin Arroyo at shortstop. Similar situation, defensive efficiency off the charts, zone rating only a little bit above. Actually, that was Louisville stats. Very small sample size there. Yeah, the zone rating and defensive efficiency both in positive territory at the major league level as well. So hopefully we can get this Reds team to a World Series championship, and we are 4 games away as we prepare for the World Series against the Mariners. And looking at our World Series matchup, these teams could not be closer. Both were second seeds with first round byes. The Mariners 93 and 69. We were also 93 and 69. We have home field advantage simply by virtue of having taken the season series against Seattle 2 games out of 3. Two best pitching teams in the league. We were number 1 in the NL, allowing 593 runs. They were number 1 in the AL, allowing 616 runs. Hopefully the offense will be the difference. They were 14th in the American League with 658 runs scored. We were 4th in the NL with 753, so we scored almost 100 runs more than the Mariners did over the course of the season. Hopefully that will prove to be important for us in this World Series, and we'll be able to generate enough offense to get 4 victories against Seattle. So we've got our center fielder back. Hopefully he can play some great defense for us, steal some bases. Zach Gallen on the mound, 13 and 12, 3.23 ERA. Logan Gilbert on the mound for the Mariners, 13 and 7 this year with a 3.32 ERA. Looks like a pretty evenly matched pitching matchup. Hopefully the home field advantage will make a difference for the Reds as we see if we can get 4 more wins and get a World Series title in Cincinnati. Off to a good start, and our offense did make a difference. 11-3 victory. A couple of home runs from the young right fielder Austin Hendrick. Also got one from Jazz Chisholm Jr. I want to say I think he's hit a home run in each series. And Ellie De La Cruz also a couple of home runs for us. Gallen with the W, Gilbert with the loss, Holmes with the save. Interesting to see that happen. They scored 2 in the first. We came back and matched them, and then scored 4 in the third to break things open. Looks like the big hit in the third was a 2-run homer from Ellie De La Cruz, following up the 2-run home run that he hit in the first inning. Tacked on runs with a 3-run homer from Hendrick in the 7th. Joey Gallo with a home run off of Gallen. So Gallen, only 1 earned run over 5 2/3 innings. Clay Holmes gets the save because he came in and pitched 3 1/3 innings of scoreless and hitless relief. Gilbert was not good. Dollard, Stanek, and Brash rounded out the pitchers for Seattle. Austin Hendrick, the player of the game, 2 for 4 with 4 ribbies. Ellie De La Cruz, 2 for 5 with 4 ribbies. Also had a big game. Apparently that extra at-bat where Ellie De La Cruz made an out was the difference between who was going to be named player of the game. So we are up 1-0, 3 games away from a potential title here with the Reds. Game 2, Luis Castillo on the mound for Seattle. 17-game winner last year when he won the AL Cy Young Award. 9-13 this year with a 4.18 ERA. Still a very effective pitcher with that plus movement and ground ball tendencies. I think he'd be pretty effective in Great American Ballpark. Will Warren, who's been disappointing in the playoffs after that excellent regular season, 0-1 with an 11.81 ERA. Hopefully we can get a nice performance against him. Would love to be in a situation where we're heading to Seattle up 2-0. And we are going to be heading to Seattle up 2-1. Warren finally with his first win of the playoffs. Meyer with the save. Home run from Tyler Stevenson. Wonder if that was a pinch hit home run because he has not been our starting catcher since we picked up Carson Kelly. Looks like we brought him on as a pinch runner very early in the game. I hope that doesn't mean there was an injury to Kelly. Carson Kelly injured after being hit by a pitch. Waiting to hear what the injury situation is with Carson Kelly. So that is, as I often say, not optimal. But Warren was very good. 3 hits, no earned runs, over 5 2/3, although he did walk 4. Enoa, Brule, and Meyer on in relief. Meyer with his 5th save of the playoffs. Offensively, Arroyo, Stevenson, Hendrick, and Chisholm with the runs batted in. So now the question is going to be what happens with Carson Kelly as far as the injury situation there. Bruised hand, day-to-day for 1 day. We can live with that. So we are heading to Seattle for Game 3. Things are looking good, I would assume, on the timing of that Carson Kelly is all set and ready to go. Yep, looks like he is completely healthy. So our Reds are up 2-0, and this is the potential for us to hopefully win one of these next 2, because we've got our number 1 and 2 starters on the mound now. Unfortunately, with the way the NLCS went longer for us than the ALCS went for the Mariners, and the fact that their series was also a game ahead of the National League Championship Series, they've kind of been able to set up their pitching staff a lot better than we have. But we've got Burns today on the mound against George Kirby. 17-6, led the American League in wins, innings pitched, ERA, BABIP, and walks per 9 inning this year. So I would have to think that the 28-year-old from Westchester, New York, will be getting some Cy Young Award votes for the Seattle Mariners this year. Hopefully Corbin Burns will be getting some Cy Young Award votes for our Cincinnati Reds, and hopefully in a battle between 2 players that are undefeated in the postseason thus far, even though we are on the road, hopefully Burns can pitch us to victory. Thus far, we've held the Mariners to 3 runs in 1 run, so their 14th ranked offense has thus far been handled pretty well by our top-ranked pitching staff. Hopefully we can keep that momentum going. Not to be the case today, though. A rough outing for Burns. It looks like we lost 7-3. Did get a homer from Kelnick, but they hit 3 home runs against us. We did score 2 in the first, but they came back, tied it up right away, took the lead in the second. We tied them in the fourth, and then they really broke things open in the fifth with 4 runs. Burns made it into that 5th inning and got ugly for him there when he allowed those runs. Ultimately, 9 hits and 1 walk, 6 earned runs over 4 innings. Diaz and Martin were fine in relief, but we were too far behind at that point. So the Mariners have struck back. They got their first victory of the series. Hopefully we can win this next one to keep the pressure on them rather than feeling like the pressure is turning to us. We've got the winningest pitcher in the National League going today in Nick Lodolo. They just won with the winningest pitcher in the AL. Hopefully we can turn the turntables on them here in Game 4. Justin Legwemick on the mound for Seattle. He was 6-4 with a 3.87 ERA this year, 21-year-old. And another New York native going up against, he was 14-6 in college this year. Whoa, he is a 4th-round draft pick who is pitching in the World Series. They must have had some injuries, or maybe they're going to use him as an opener or something. I'm assuming he's pitched in the playoffs at some point. Okay, yeah, he apparently started a game against Boston in their NLCS. So, odd situation. 21-year-old made his major league debut without ever having pitched in the minors in the American League Championship Series. And now Seattle is going to be relying on him here in Game 4 of the World Series. So A lot of pressure on Legwamick at home. Feel like this is a game that we need to win. We've got the biggest winner in the National League, one of the top pitchers in the National League on the mound, going up against a guy who has pitched one game at the major league level. Feel like if we win this game, we're in pretty good shape. If we lose this one, feels like one that could really end up haunting us. And a 1-0 victory. Palante and Scott, so two relievers, feels like a extra inning classic. Went to 13 innings, so both of the pitchers did brilliantly. Legwamick pitched well for them. The Rule 5 backup outfielder, Benny Montgomery, with a run-scoring single in the top of the 13th, delivers the W for Cincinnati. Lodolo only went 4 2/3 innings, but then we obviously got scoreless relief from Diaz, San Martin, Brule, 3 innings out of Meyer before Palante finally came on and pitched those last 2 innings to earn the W. Legwamick was brilliant. 2 hits, 1 walk, and 7 strikeouts over 6 innings for the youngster. Named the player of the game, but the win goes to the Reds. And our Cincinnati Reds are 1 game away from a potential World Series championship. On the mound, rematch of Game 1, which we won 11-3. Gallen against Logan Gilbert. Would love for the Cincinnati fans to be able to celebrate a World Series victory at Great American Ballpark and see us win in person, but honestly, I would rather just get the win here in Game 5 on the road. We can still have a nice parade in Cincinnati for all of the fans if we get the W here today and don't even put ourselves in position where we've got to win another game in Cincinnati. Let's see what happens here in Game 5. The Mariners 5-4 victory. Looks like Gilbert outpitched Gallen, Hendrick, and Vera with homers for us. Joey Gallo, the bane of my existence as a Yankees fan, continues to be a excellent player in the playoffs, at least in OOTP. Also hit 41 homers this year. It looks like his third of the playoffs, third of the series. Sorry, he hit homers in the first and second games. Here in the fifth game, he also hits his third home run. So the Mariners with a 5-4 win. They scored 4 in the second and 3 in the third. We tried to claw back with 2 in the sixth, but just not enough. So we still have work to do. Zach Gallen, not good. 8 hits and 5 earned runs over 2 1/3 innings. Enoa, San Martin, and Brule combined for 5 2/3 innings, since we didn't have to face them in the ninth. 5 2/3 innings of scoreless relief, but by that point the game was out of control. Hendrick 3 for 4 with 3 ribbies, including a big triple that scored 2 runs. But we are heading back home, and we still have some work to do. So the job is not done yet. Rematch of Game 2, which we won 4-1. Luis Castillo up against Will Warren. Warren finally got the W there in Game 2, pitched really well. See if we can avoid a Game 7. And we are the champions. 2-0 victory. Revers San Martin in relief. Castillo took the loss. Max Meyer with his second save of the World Series. And our Cincinnati Reds, in our 4th season as general manager, have officially turned this team around. 3 consecutive playoff appearances, 2 consecutive NL Central titles, and we are now 2026 World Series champions. Taking a look at the box score, scored a run in the first and a run in the sixth. Obviously got some great pitching. Looking at the ribbies, came from Vera and Carson Kelly. Will Warren, 4 2/3 innings, didn't pitch long enough to get the W, but still did a nice job, only 2 hits. And Max Meyer gave up the third and final hit that Seattle was able to generate in his final 9th inning of work, picking up his 6th save of the playoffs. Luis Castillo, a hard luck loser, 7 1/3 innings, only 1 earned run. But it all worked out for our Cincinnati Reds, who have completed this 2026 season as World Series champions. Austin Hendrick, the young outfielder, is the World Series most valuable player. So our Cincinnati Reds are the 2026 World Series champions. Probably means it's the end of this series. We'll be back with at least one more episode to kind of review the top performers for our team, think about what the plan should be for this team for the postseason. But as I said, I don't know why I wouldn't go out on top, given that this was intended to be a relatively short-term series till we began our long-term play, with the fact that we've got a new and updated patch for OOTP 24 that hopefully will make the long-term play something that's viable at this time. Seems like it may be time to move on, but at least one more episode to come recapping the season. Until then, we are going to be celebrating with the fans in Cincinnati until our next episode. Thanks so much for watching, and hope you have a great day.